let's try to get this thing in here and saved. Let's think about how we're going to save it, actually. There's some behavioral stuff here. Okay, so we have the save function now inside the editor. Here we go. We have the save function now, but like, when do we save it? How would you save? How would anybody save this if we were making this? How would you have this be? Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably want to link it to a button just because you wouldn't want somebody to accidentally like backspace their entire text area or accidentally paste something over it and then lose their entry because it's automatically patched through. I'd want there to be some user validation.
So a manual button where you hit save.
Yeah.
Okay, that works. Well, anybody else?
CRDTs, obviously. You want that. No.
Sure, we're definitely not doing that.
How long is this workshop? No.
Yeah. Not long enough for that.
I would do either a button or maybe like an on key up, but checking what the key is to avoid something like that. I think they both have pros. Both have pros and cons. Right?
Yeah, everything's a trade-off. Yeah, it's like finding this line between like a good user experience of like just working, but also like being able to like unstuck yourself if you just accidentally backspaced or did something. So like having like good history. There really is no right answer. In this course, we're gonna do an autosave. So it's just going to save automatically for you, but it's not going to be looking at keystrokes or anything like that. It's just going to do it by state. It's going to detect when state changes and try to debounce from that versus looking at the keystrokes. It's not perfect, but it took me 5 minutes to make, so it's gonna be a 5-minute solution. So, it's a good rough draft. It's like, just, hey, I put that PR up there. Don't look at it yet, though. It's just up there, though. Don't look. I just want you to know it's there. But if you do look, let me know. It's like one of those vibes. Cool. So in order to do that, I was just going to just create the autosave hook from scratch, and I did. And then I realized that's like a 2-hour lecture on doing that. So I just found a package that did almost what I wanted. So we're going to install that. And I believe, I forgot the name of the package now. I got to go look. I believe it is called, React-autosave. So let's do that. npm install React-autosave. And basically what this hook does, I can show you before we do it, is, where's an example? Here we go. So basically what this hook does is you can call it, you can give it some data to watch for changes. It puts that in a use effect, I'm sure. And then give it a function to call when it detects a change. And then you can adjust the debounce on that. So it's pretty trivial, but can be quite powerful. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And then we can like have like a saving state to show like some feedback to the user that, hey, this thing is currently saving right now, and things like that. We won't handle, edge cases like what happens if they start typing when it's saving, and what happens if it errors out while they're typing. Like we're not doing that. It's too much work. I've did that for like years, and it's soul crushing. So we're not going to do that. But yeah, let's add some auto saving. So I'll say use auto save like that. You can bring that in. It doesn't have a return value, so just an object like that. And then the data prop. So what do we want to watch for changes? Well, of course, the value. Whenever the value changes, because that's the thing that's being changed on change. And then on save, we could just run a function here. So I'm just going to say async. And inside here, you'll get the value that changed, right? So I'm just going to put underscore value. It's the changed value. You could just grab the value from here, but it might be a few cycles behind in the render cycle. So it's not guaranteed to be up to date. It's the same logic from if you were to call like a set value that relied on some other value. This is not guaranteed to be what you think it is. So instead you have to put that in a callback like this to make sure that you are on the current cycle that you think you're on, because the rendering cycle might be lagging behind. So we get the value there, and then on save, we just want to bring in our function that we made, which was called update entry. So let's do that. So we'll say, yeah, cool. Let's get the entry or update it. This will be await update entry. It takes in an ID and some content. So the ID is going to be entry.id, and then the content is going to be underscore value. Cool. So we got that. And then what do we want to do with this update? Yes.
I was just going to ask if you could speak to underscore value really quick. What is that pointing to? Is that pointing to the current state of the hook on 8?
Yeah, so underscore value and value are the same thing. They both represent the value of the text area in this case. But the reason why we would want to use this version of it and not this version of it is because of just how React does rendering and how it does batching. If we instead use this value, okay, I'll say this function gets called whenever autosave detects a change from this value. So it detects that change, and then it issues a callback on which we can then write some code in that pretty much guarantees that we have the latest version of this value. If we use this version of it, it might not be the latest version. It could be a couple cycles behind, especially on something like a text editor where someone's typing really fast. It might be a couple keystrokes behind. So you could use it, it'll work, but you might have some issues there. So I put an underscore in front of it because it is the same thing as this, but you can't, I don't want to, I mean, this works too. I don't have to put an underscore in front of it. It'll still be the same thing. I just hate doing variable shadowing like that. It's confusing. Cool. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. So we have that. The other thing to note is that, like, okay, what do we do with the updated entry when it comes back? Do we like set that somewhere? Like, do we put that somewhere? No. If we did that, it would mess things up, because if they started typing while this was saving and then we went back and set the text area to what this saved to, it would erase everything they just typed. So we don't actually want to update the text area with the updated value. The text area is never going to wait on the server to update the screen. It's just going to keep going, and it's just going to save in the background. So yes, that does create edge cases like, what if I hit back on the page before the autosave kicked in, and things like that. So you got to catch those edge cases, and there are a lot. But that's what you got to do for a great user experience. Just got to deal with those edge cases. So right now we're not going to do anything with it right now, but we'll get to it in a minute. We should have a loading state though. Let's do that so we can know what what's going on. So we can say is loading, set is loading equals use state false. And then when this kicks off, we can say, oh yeah, this thing is loading, and then this thing is done. We can say, okay, it's done. Set is loading to false, like so. And then we'll just throw something really ugly on the screen when something's loading. Is loading, and loading. Cool. Any questions so far? Yes.
Is there any debouncing control with autosave, or can you speak to how it would debounce?
Yeah, there's a, what's it called? Let me see. I'm trying to think of the name of the property that, let's just look at the docs. I'm trying to duck type right now. Use React autosave. It does have an ability for you to pass in like that time. Where is it at? interval. There it is. So you can pass an interval. So the number of milliseconds between save attempts. So basically the bounce attempt by default is 2 seconds. So you can play around with that. If you go look at the source code, which is something I always do on smaller libraries like this, it's actually really simple. So if you go look at the use autosave component, I mean, it's just doing a few use effects, right? And it's using a use debounce hook, which is probably doing some debouncing, I would imagine. They created it themselves. And yeah, it's just watching that data that you gave it, and it's keeping track of the functions with the ref, which is basically, a ref is basically the same thing as like state, except for it doesn't cause a re-render. And yeah, that's it. It's actually really, really simple how they're doing it. So you can take a look at it if you want to learn some more. And then as far as like the use debounce, if you want to take a look at that, yeah, it's literally just a set timeout. So it's a simple thing, but it's very powerful for sure. It's much simpler than what I was making, which was like 5 times the size of that. I was getting crazy with it. Okay. Let's see what we broke, yeah? So if I start typing something and we wait 2 seconds, it's going to break or it's going to work. We're going to find out right now. So let's wait 2 seconds. It says loading. I didn't see an error. It looked good. So if I refresh and this still stays on the page, then it worked. Looks like it did. So that was pretty clean. That was some Notion level user experience.